My name is Josh Miller. I own Riverstone Kennels, and I've been training gun dogs for more than 16 years. I have field trialed, I've hunt tested, but at the end of the day, I'm a duck hunter. You might find that the duck in our Duck Dogs podcast is spelled uniquely. The UK stands for my British Labs. I love my British Labs. I love what they offer me, both as a part of my family and the high motor in the field. As you're going to find, I have some pretty special dogs. Follow along in our podcast series here as we talk about both in the field hunting and in the field training situations that will hopefully help you progress with your dog at home. Welcome back to Duck Dogs, everybody. Josh Miller here, and bringing you another episode, an episode to end the year. Crazy that we've already been doing this for 1 year. Thank you all for being along for this ride, and this will be kind of a fun episode to wrap up the year, and I'll kind of prep what I'm doing to start off the new year, which will be really fun too. So before I get into it, of course, want to thank our sponsors. Thank you to DUK. DUK is the presenting sponsor of this podcast and has been all year. Thank you very much to them. Huge supporter of not only this podcast, of course, but so many great outdoor and gun dog organizations, events, testing, trialing, and a lot of competing. Very cool to have a company like that supports what we love to do. And so thank you, DUK. I personally feed the Premium Performance Sport 30/20 blend, but I would highly recommend checking them out, not only for the food, but again, an organization that supports what we as dog owners and gun dog owners specifically, what we do and what makes our dogs special. So thank you to DUK. Thank you to Sitka Gear. I am stoked because next week, I guess I'm kind of giving away what some of this episode will be about, but I will be out in Montana next week hunting with a couple of my buddies from Sitka, and again, just a great company, great organization, and better yet, maybe not better yet, but definitely helps that they make the best clothing that you can buy specifically for the outdoorsman. So go check them out, www.sitkagear.com. Also, thank you to Gundog Supply. Gundog Supply is your one-stop shop for all of your hunting and training needs, and make sure to go check out all the tools that they have that can make your next training season successful. And last but not least, thank you to Lucky Duck. Lucky Duck has the 5-star crash test rated kennel, both in the intermediate and the large, so it's the safest way that your four-legged hunting partner can travel. So go check them out, www.luckyduck.com. I've said this before, but I very sincerely mean this, that the sponsorships for this show really do revolve around personal relationships and how great of people are inside those companies. We actually had a number of companies that we've talked to and approached us about being a part of this that we just politely declined because we didn't have those relationships, and not that they weren't great people. We didn't know that. We wanted to work with great people, and so those 4 companies, they've just been great, not only product-wise, but great, people and organization-wise. And I think there's a lot to be said about that, especially in the world that we live in today. So thank you guys so much for the year. Thank you for your support and your sponsorships. And thank you for you guys that are listening in supporting those sponsors so that we can do this again next year. So crazy, right? A year. We've been doing this for a year. I didn't hit one episode a week. I was wanting to. I think I came up maybe like 4 short of that. It was something that I drastically underestimated how difficult it would be to sit down and record this. And I think a couple things came into play here. I think one, training season gets super busy for me, and then you get into hunting season, which is traveling. And I thought in my head, when I'm traveling, this is going to be easy, right? I could record them while I'm driving. Well, that's not safe, nor does it really seem doable. And then the next thought was, well, I'm going to be at these camps. I'm going to be, in a hotel room. I'll be able to, carve out time to do that. Well, that didn't ever really happen because one, I'm dog tired by the time I finally get to the room or camp. Then there's always people around. I just feel rude saying, hey, I'm going to excuse myself from the group and I'm just going to go record one of these. And so it proved to be difficult. I think I have a better plan of action for next year. I think I have some cool things for next year I'm hopefully going to implement, hopefully make this better. But here's my ask to you guys. If you could send me a message on my personal Instagram, it's Josh_Miller. I think it's _2 because Josh Miller was already taken. So Josh_Miller, _2, I think is what it is. And go send me a note if there's anything that I could be doing better, anything you'd like to see different, any feedback you have for me. I'd love that as I kind of bring together what I think next year is going to be. I really want next year to be an evolution of this year, make it better, make it stronger, make it more entertaining, make it more valuable, whatever you think it is. I'd love to hear your feedback. So go send me a note. I'd greatly appreciate that. So, but yeah, regardless, I already have some fun things, kind of playing in a better plan of attack. So it'll be, I think, a good year either way. But it should be really fun here as we get into the new year. So a couple things. First off, hope everyone had a great Christmas. Christmas is always a super fun time of year for me, especially now that I have kids that are kind of growing up. Ava's now, 2.5, seems like she's going on 22.5. Colt is, just over a year, and they're really in that fun stage of, Colt's running around and interacting with everybody, and Ava's understanding what presents are and, going to see grandma and grandpa and doing these things. And so it's really fun. It kind of re-energizes me into the heart of the season, right? Because I'll admit that there was definitely a point that was like, roll my eyes, have to drag myself to my parents' house and then to Whitney's parents' house and then Whitney's grandparents' house. And then we have to go back. It's like you do all this running around in 2 days and sometimes you just want to, stop. And having the kids again has just kind of made it, made me understand it a little more, maybe appreciate it a little more. The other thing is that you don't realize, or at least I didn't, some of these people are not going to be here forever. We lost Whitney's grandmother here, this year, and definitely noticed that, this year. I lost my grandmother a few years back, and so it becomes real of how important this is. So I hope everybody had a great season, holiday season, great Christmas season, and that you had a lot of fun with the family. Here's the one thing that I found very interesting, and I don't know if everyone is like this, but I've noticed this now. It seems like in every group, in every, I think I noticed it more during Christmas season because you have your get-togethers, there seems to be a crazy dog person in every group. And rarely is it the dog person. Okay, so example, I would say that Whitney and I are the dog people in probably any group that we're in. We never drag our dogs to get-togethers. We never, bring our dog uninvited over to someone's house and just expect that they can come. But it seems like there are those people out there. And I think what makes me notice it even more is that it seems like those dogs are always the dogs that are out of control or not mannered, right? So a couple examples is we had a get-together at our house here, a bunch of family and friends. And somebody just brought their dog over. And I've noticed this over the years. I don't know if it's, again, because we're the dog people that people think that dogs are just invited. But this happens a fair amount to us. It's like when people come over, they just bring the dogs. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, so your dog is in my house. My dogs are out in our kennel because I don't want to inconvenience the party or the group, and we've got kids running around and everything else. And so I'm trying to be respectful, but yet your dog is in my house. Isn't that crazy? And then, we had kind of another step of this where we're at Whitney's parents for Christmas, and one of the family members had, their dog there, and it was, they had kind of it blocked off in the mudroom, and the dog is just barking and whining and scratching at the door and all stuff. And like, maybe I'm a little more sensitive to it because these are major pet peeves of mine and I just don't enjoy any of this. That's why I love having well-mannered dogs. But I'm just sitting here going, one, like, why does anyone think this is okay? Right? Like, this is driving me insane. Two, again, the dog people didn't bring their dogs, right? It's just weird to me that this is something that is thought to be okay. And then three, how crazy is it that people live with dogs like this? It is insane to me that you can take a non-mannered dog, a poorly mannered dog that barks, that whines, that doesn't listen, that is always pushing the envelope, that is getting into what they shouldn't be getting into, that is all over the house all the time, that is up on the furniture, that's doing all these things. Like, and it's just okay? And I know I'm the bad guy, right? Because, I love my dog. I want my dog to go do these things. I want my dog. That's great. But no one else enjoys having your dog here. It is, I don't know. Maybe it was just the Christmas season. Maybe it was just, everything. But it has just hit me here these last couple of weeks of that people think that this is normal. People think this is okay. And that's what kind of makes me, come back to, you guys have heard me preach obedience so much, right? I cannot fathom living with dogs that are not obedient, that are not under control, that are not well behaved. So maybe I'm sensitive to it, but I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one, but I highly doubt there's no one out there listening, not chuckling on themselves going, I know that person in my life. It's not my cup of tea. That's for sure. Not my cup. So anyway, Christmas, crazy dog people. Yeah. It's crazy. I had a note that was sent in off my Instagram that I wanted to kind of go over and talk about because I think it is so relevant specifically for the time of year. So this note said, Josh, looking for some advice here. I'm up in the north, winter is here, season is over, but I'm really having a hard time finding the situations to train in due to the weather. Do you have any advice? And I think that this is a really interesting thing to go over. One, because I'm in the middle of it myself, right now. I'll go over that. But two, this is where I think getting creative and being a handler / trainer, but a handler comes into play. So as a handler, you're looking to get the most out of your dog in any given situation. So when Mother Nature hits, what do you do? So here at the kennel, when we bring dogs in for training, we specifically do not take gun dogs in over the winter months. Now, this has to do with being respectful to our clients because naturally, we cannot get as much done with a dog over the winter months as a gun dog as we can in the spring and the summer. Think about it. We have snow, we have ice, we have no water whatsoever to work with. Our cover gets knocked down like crazy. Like there's just too many things working against us where if we had the same dog a few months later in the summer, we'd be able to get a lot more done. And so for someone that is spending their hard-earned money to invest in their dog, I just don't feel that it's right to bring that dog in my situation into the kennel when I can get more out of them just a few months later. So that's why we don't bring dogs in. But if you're training at home, this doesn't mean you just stop. And I think that's the temptation for so many of us that are up in the north that have to battle this because it's just not enjoyable, right? It's not enjoyable for us to be out there. You just simply cannot get as much done in the winter in the north as you can during the summer. But I feel like that excuse makes it to where people don't go out and they just don't attempt to continue to make progress. So let me give you my example. My personal example I'm going through right now is with Solo. So Solo, you guys have heard me talk about him. He's my young dog that I brought in from overseas that I am training He has been on a couple hunts, but has not gone on a retrieve. When I take him on these hunts, he is sitting with me. He's just taking in the environment. He's watching what's going on. He's watching the birds work. He's hearing the guns go off. He's hearing the calls. Everything that I really can't train for, he is currently going through, right? So he's soaking that in. The reason I'm doing that again is I don't want to create these bad habits. So in the meantime, as I'm back at home, I'm continuing to train with him. Now, here's where it's difficult with him, is that he's going through his advanced training, his handling. Well, we, for example, just had a snow/ice storm. So what we got is about 6 inches of snow and which turned into rain, which made it to where basically there's a skating rink everywhere you go right now. Crusty. I mean, when I was snow blowing this morning, I'm throwing ice everywhere, right? When I'd walk in the snow, it's crunch. Like I actually took the tractor and cleared out a big area so the dogs didn't rip their pads up on the ice. Like it's really bad. So how do I go and make progress, with him? Well, I can't just keep going and doing the drills that I've been doing because one, it's not safe, and two, we're just not going to be as productive with it. So what I defer to is I defer to obedience. I go back, I go into the driveway, I go into the garage, and I just simply do obedience. Now, yes, this is not going to feel like I'm making progress and moving forward, but if you think about everything that we're doing from an advanced level, it all revolves around obedience. If I hit that whistle, tweet, and I expect a whistle sit, and he blows me off, that's obedience. If I give him a cast and he fights me and goes a different way, that is obedience. If I ask him to heel, to line him up to go on a line, and he's fighting me, swinging his head, wanting to do something different, that is obedience. Deferring back to obedience is always a safe route, but at least I'm doing something. Because what's tempting is that I look at this going, well, it's December, the weather is crappy out, I don't want to be out there. I'm going to make every excuse in my head of why he shouldn't be out there. And let's just say that this is a bad winter. Well, a bad winter here in Wisconsin means we're going to have snow right now in December. We're going to have snow in January, in February, in March, and a part of April. That's 5 months. So you're going to tell me that I'm going to sit here for 5 months and not make progress? Think about how long it would take you to achieve your goals with your dog if you took half the year and you said, it's winter, we're not going to make progress, so I'm not going to go do it. Yeah, that's half that dog's life. Then, if you say, now my training season, again, I'm just using rough numbers here, is May, June, July, August, September, October. Let's just not use November because then it's 6 months, okay? So, of those, then you're saying, well, shoot, September and October is hunting season, so those are out. So you're going to say 4 months. You're going to say a third of your dog's life is where you can make progress. Come on, like that's just not realistic. At least not to go achieve your big goals. So get creative on how you can go achieve that. Again, my defer is if I cannot do anything, I'm going to obedience. Even if it's as simple as you're going to sit on a place board, like one of the things I'll do a lot with my dogs is in my garage is where I have my home gym, and I work out every single morning. So every morning when I go in there, I put Solo on a place board, and I go and do my workout. Now, I'm working out, but he's working too because we're training. We're obedience training. Again, it's simple. We're not running a big 200-300 yard blind. But we're hoping that this will keep the progress going. Don't give him this whole time off. And so it is something that you're going to fight. It is something that you're just going to have to accept, right? Unless you're going to move, you're going to have to accept it and say, how do I make lemonade out of these lemons? That's where we go with this. If you do that, you will continue to make that progress, and you won't have to then come spring have to take 4 steps backwards to rehash the things that got loose over the winter before you start moving forward. Optimize your time. Optimize your time and stay on course the best you can. Don't let the weather, because here's the deal. Couldn't you find a reason, like anytime, couldn't you find a reason not to work? I'm going to stick with the dog stuff here, but like, okay, so springtime, it's muddy, it's still cold, the water's not warm enough yet, right? We'll push it off. Summer, it's hot. I don't want him to overheat. Like I can't do the early morning because of work. I'm just not going to risk it, right? Well, fall's hunting season, right? So we're not trained during hunting season. Well, now it's winter. Like, you could always find a reason to. Find a reason to work. Go after something that needs work, perfect it, and keep moving forward, even if it's baby steps. Do not let the winter hold you back. That's my advice on that. I want to move into something I've talked about in the past, and something that I think people have seen more, especially now that I've talked about it. I'm hearing a lot of responses of people seeing this, but it is bad habits that are picked up on the hunt. The reason I want to talk about this is I've hunted with 2 dogs recently. A lot of times in my travels, you get hooked up with someone who's now hunting with someone, and when you get there on the hunt, there's another dog there. Now, that other dog is likely not a dog that is from us as far as puppy-wise, is likely not a dog that is trained to the level of our dogs. Quite frankly, most of the time, the dog is very poorly trained, period. And so my dogs then, all of a sudden, the difficult level increases, because now I have to combat for the other dog's bad behavior as a handler and make sure that my dog stays under control, the wheels don't come off, there's no temptations to get out of pocket or somewhere that they shouldn't, right? So it's interesting how these hunts, I think there's a thought out there that the hunt is the game and there's no practice that can happen during the game. And I'll tell you, a lot of times if I see something come up on a hunt that I want to fix, I will wait until the hunt is over, and then I'll go set up a training session right then and there. And we're going to work through this. Yes, it can be difficult, especially if you're hunting with people you don't know, because you're asking, hey, can you hold up picking decoys up for 20 minutes while I do this? Or, hey, can we, that group just finished, can I run my dog on this thing because I need to work them through this? Like, you got to be careful with it, because, you got to be respectful. It's everybody else's hunt too. Like, a lot of people are, whether it's time off work or, one of their few hunts they get to go in a year, like, you don't want to ruin that just because you want to get your dog work. But I think there's strategic times that you can go and implement a mini training session in the hunt. I really like the after the hunt situation, because it just offers more. I don't have the distractions of other people, or I don't feel the weight of someone being impatient because my dog is out there in a quote unquote training situation. Especially again, if you don't hunt, or if you don't waterfowl hunt, you may not understand. If my dog is out in the middle of a hunt and we're going through a training session, well, I could be screwing up birds coming in, and ruining the hunt, for other people. So after the hunt is what I really, really like. And I'll kind of walk through this, because there was a gentleman that asked a question, and I actually watched a dog do this. So this in particular dog, the one that I watched, which again, same situation someone asked about, was a young dog that was getting hung up in the decoys, and then after that just going wild. Okay. So I've seen this a lot. And the reason I've seen this, I believe, is because you have this young dog, likely in the first season of hunting, that is learning the game. All right. So what is the one thing that every one of us want to do for our young dogs they're learning? We want to give them those birds right over the decoys, big splashes in the water, so that they can go out and they can be successful. All right. And the reality is, most of the birds that, especially those young dogs, pick up, they're in the decoys. Right? They're those easy retrieves, those gimmies, those retrieves that build a young dog's confidence, which is great. What at the same time it often does is it conditions that young dog that every retrieve should be in the decoys or will be in the decoys. So all of a sudden you get that one that sails, or you get that one that lands, 50 yards past the decoys. You send the dog runs out there, and there's like a brick wall, an invisible brick wall in the decoys that young dog hits, and he starts going, it should have been here by now. Hunt, 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 hunt. Meanwhile, the handler's sitting there getting frustrated going, how did you not see that it went past that? Right? So this is probably where the yelling starts. So, hey, come here, hey, sit, hey. And then it's back, back, back. Well, the dog doesn't know back, right? You might as well be yelling refrigerator or microwave because the dog has no idea what you're talking about. And then almost inevitably, the handler will turn to somebody else in the blind and go, well, he doesn't know hand signals yet, or he doesn't run blind retrieves yet. Okay? So let me back up one step. You've heard me talk about solo. You've heard me talk about redshirting your dog that first year. You've heard me talk about finishing your training before you get out in the field. This is a prime example of why. Because at this point, only bad habits are arising. Only frustration is coming out. Only bad things are going to happen, unless he happens to get lucky and catches wind. But if you think about it, the wind in a waterfall situation is usually going from your back away from you, because you want those birds landing into the wind. So the odds of your dog catching scent when the scent is blowing away from him is pretty low. So that's where, frustration, oftentimes, quite frankly, embarrassment. A lot of times if you're in front of your buddies, it's embarrassing having your dog go nuts out there and you're calling and yelling for him. Now, the young dog is having the time of his life, because he's sitting there going, I got other birds here. I want another bird so bad. This is what I live for. It's got to be here. And he's frantically doing what he thinks is right. This is where, if your training was done, you could go tweet, sit down, back, cast to the bird, success, hoorah, this is awesome. Right? This is where those good habits from the solid foundation of training and finishing that training before hitting the field really comes up. Okay? But these young dogs that have not had that, this is one of the negative repercussions of that. Because how do you handle this? Okay? You could walk past the decoys, walk him out to that bird. That's great. Give him that success, come back, get back under control. Because letting him go off the rails and going out of control doesn't benefit anybody. Right? Nip that in the bud as fast as you can. And that's probably the best way to do it, is walk out and give the dog that retrieve. Or if you have another bird in the blind with you, throw a bird out, just give him a retrieve so he can get back to you and get back under control. Okay? But this is one of the situations that you come up with these young dogs. Okay? So this will likely be something that you fight the next season as you go into training season, because if you have decoys out, he's probably going to recall, hey, those I was really successful in those decoys, and he's going to fight you pulling to those decoys. It's something to think about. This is why, again, I preach so much. Make sure your training is done before you start hunting. It is going to cause some hurdles for you. Don't know where, might not be this, but it will cause hurdles for you somewhere. Okay, so let me go to dog number 2 that I wanted to reference. So dog number 2, this dog's owner has become a good friend of mine. He takes us out on a number of spec hunts and duck hunts down in Arkansas when we're down in his area. He's a great guy. And last year, his dog was breaking like crazy. And it was something that was really frustrating for me in a personal sense. Not that I was like visibly frustrated or upset or anything like that, but it was very tempting. Now my dogs are sitting there watching the dog run out in the decoys as the shooting or before the shooting even happens. So I hated it from a safety aspect. I hated it from a dog handler aspect because now I'm having to keep an extra eye on my dogs just in case. I trust them. The training's done, but you just never know. It is going to cause some extra temptation. And I remember the first time he went out, or she, I'm sorry, went out there. This girl was trying to catch the geese as they were coming out of the air, as they were falling down dead, is how out she was when she was breaking. So he said that he worked on it a bunch over the summer, and thought he had it under control. Went on in that first hunt, boom, she started breaking again. Well, of course she did. This is something that I always kind of look back on my first dog and Easton. Easton, when I first got Easton, I had no idea what I was doing. I just wanted a dog to retrieve. And if that dog retrieved something for me, I was ecstatic. Oh my gosh, I have a dog that will bring a duck back to me. And I remember that. That was a euphoric kind of feeling, like I was absolutely on top of the world. I had no idea all this other stuff even went into it. So now I put myself in that situation and go, okay, I know what you're going through. So Easton, because he broke that first season, and then me being me, and I have this, you could almost call it a sickness of, if I'm doing something, I want to be the best at it, and I get obsessive over improving. And so I dug myself into books, into videos, realized, oh, your dog's supposed to sit at your side until you tell them to go. They're supposed to retrieve it all the way back to hand. They're supposed to do these things, right? So the breaking part of it is something I fought him with on the first hunt of every season for the rest of his life. On the first hunt, I had to sit there. I had to make a correction. I had to make sure he understood that I was asking him to be steady. And then for the whole rest of the season, he was good. But I promise you, every first hunt, I fought him on it. So my buddy Nick, I told him the same thing. I was like, man, this might be something you continue to fight. It might not be something that she just gets over, because she is jacked up. And she went a whole season, and she gets a lot of feathers in her mouth. So she went a whole season and retrieved hundreds of birds breaking. You can't replicate that in a trained situation. So when you go out into the field, she is going to recall that, and she is going to probably break, or at least want to break. So what we ended up doing is, this is where we involved the e-collar. So what happened was, she wanted to break, and Nick would not shoot, would watch her, and the second she thought about going, watching every part of her body, was it her toenails, gripping over the side of the blind? Was it a lean? Was it, a jerk? Whatever it was, immediately bump on the collar. That's all it took. Bump on the collar, and she'd go, oh, shoot, I got to check myself. I know I'm not supposed to be going. That's all it took to keep her under control. And I promise you, this year, she has been way better. Night and day. She had one situation this last hunt where we had what we call a control break, which is, Nick called the shot, boom, 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 and all of a sudden you hear, no! And she was probably, 10 yards out there, and she stopped, and she came back, and she went in the blind, and Nick did, and I was so proud of him. Nick did exactly what he should have done, which is, he said, Josh, you're picking all these up. That right there was, her name is Sadie. That right there is Sadie. You're going to sit here, and you're going to watch this other dog get the reward you wanted because you weren't under control. It has been really fun for me to watch. I wasn't going to use names, so Nick, if you hear this, or any of our buddies, this is all positive because I'm very proud of Nick in this. But I kind of look at Nick as, I was when I first got Easton. This was my first gun dog. There was so much learning, and there was so much improvement every year. And quite frankly, I think Easton was a way better dog than what he even proved that he was, between all of his tests and his trial accomplishments, simply because he did it with a very inexperienced handler in myself. I had to learn. I probably made more mistakes with Easton than I made with maybe every other dog I've ever handled combined since then. And he still accomplished that much. He was an incredible dog. And I see that type of relationship with Nick and Sadie because they're learning together. They're improving together. They're getting better each. And what's cool about it is for me, I think, as much as, Nick and I have a good friendship. I benefit from Nick because Nick has a lot of great property and he brings me on hunts, but I also think that Nick has benefited from me from seeing how I handle my dogs and how, my dogs do their job as efficiently. And if he needs tools, if he needs guidance, if he needs training drills, if he needs something, he knows he can come to me and I provide that for him. And so it's been really fun from year 1 to 2, the difference. Year 1, I would have said the first thing you should teach her is how to fair catch, like in football, because that's basically what she's doing is she's catching these birds that they're coming out of the air is how bad she's breaking. But to watch that transition go from that to where she is now is really neat. And so, yes, some hurdles were put in front of them, and I think will continue to stay in front of them potentially for the rest of her life because of that first year and the bad habits. But it's not anything he can't work through, and he is working through. And it's really neat, to see that. So don't let those bad habits be overly discouraging. Don't let it be something that just breaks you down. Don't let it be something that you think you can't get over. It just requires patience. And repetition probably being one of the biggest things that need to be there, because without repetition, you're not going to get anywhere. And that kind of comes to the hunt itself. The reality is you are never going to have the gun dog that you think maybe that you want. You're never going to have the gun dog that your dog is likely capable of if you're only going on 1 to 2 hunts a year. It takes birds. It takes experience. It takes those live situations to allow a dog to progress and develop into the dog that that they can be. I understand that is easier said than done. I really do. You've heard me talk about Easton, this episode. You've heard me talk about him in the past, but I've always said that I had Easton at the absolute right time in my life because of what he did for me and the path that he put me on as far as the profession goes. I've also always said that Easton had me in the absolute worst time that he could have. If Easton had me right now, if he was sitting next to me right now, he would be able to hunt a lot of places he never got to. He would get a lot more birds in his mouth. He would have probably been twice the dog that he actually ended up being because he didn't have me holding him back due to the knowledge and exposure I can give him now. That's a scary thing for me to think about. But I look at my current dogs and I'm going, if you had the limited exposure that Easton did, what would you be? How good would you be? It's really an interesting thought. And with Easton, what I did is the number of hunts that he and I went out, and I would hike decoys into this little public pond. I threw some decoys out, and I would just sit there and hope to see a bird. I couldn't tell you how many hunts were like that. Most of them probably. And yet, it was that experience of going out that when we did get one, it was, he had been there before, right? He wasn't breaking. He wasn't out of control. He wasn't doing those things because we had sat there and we had been there. And it also pushed me to be a better hunter, I think. I think it pushed me to scout more efficiently, to get right on the X, because the limited time I had to go, I had to make it count. So, it was really interesting, but it's amazing to me from a training standpoint, because I'm starting to get a lot of feedback from my clients that have been in the field, have been hunting, their hunting seasons. A lot of people in the north, their hunting seasons are done or almost done, and they're starting to kind of give me feedback of kind of where the dogs are at, right? So one of the most recent emails I received was, telling me about how the dog did, fantastic. Always the pride of the group as far as, I was, proud of him versus how the other dogs, were in the group and yada, yada, yada. But got to go on 3 hunts this year. I'm like, and he's like, in the email, he said, I really can't wait to see, what his next level is and his next step is. 3 hunts is not a whole lot of exposure, right? So we really can't think that he benefited an extreme amount. Like, he certainly benefited some, and I'm sure he got better. But it's not like he got on, 13 hunts or 33 hunts, right? And so I think our expectations need to change a little bit as we kind of go through this based on the situations that we're able to give our dogs. There really is no replacement for that live hunt. Nothing replaces that. All that you really can do is give your dog as much exposure as you can, as much positive exposure as you can, and then build off it year after year. Yeah, everyone has a different situation, but I just think that our expectations should also be a little fluid depending on how we're able to get our dog into each hunting season. Something just keep in the back of your mind. The other thing I've thought a lot about, and this is more just kind of me reflecting, I've thought a lot about timelines recently. The reason I've thought about timelines is because, so we at the kennel, we're booked for almost the entire year of 2022 as it sits right now. It is not even 2022 yet. We're booked for almost the entire year for training. That's insane to me. But in that year, we still are getting kind of some inquiries trickling in to see if we have room. And there's one gentleman in particular that brought up to me that, well, this other trainer said he can do it in less time. I'm like, great, go to the other trainer. And I didn't mean that in a snippy or arrogant way, but I mean, I just don't, like, this isn't something that you can put those hard timelines on. And so you've heard me talk about that before. I'm not going to bore you with it, but what I am going to use the comparison to is solo. Okay, so how crazy is it to me that someone brings a dog in for training and they want to know how long it is going to take me to train that dog? Okay, was it going to take you 12 weeks or 14 weeks or 16 weeks, or how long? I need to know. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here with one of my personal dogs who I think is going to end up being a complete stud. And we're going to be probably going on like a year and a half before he's done. 12 weeks, 14 weeks, 16 weeks. Like, that's what we normally do our training programs in. Like, it is crazy that we think that is finishing a dog. It's crazy. I don't know why I've thought so much about that recently, but I think this whole solo, call it the solo experiment if you want. But I think that's a really interesting one is I've never kept anyone up to date on any progress of any of my other dogs, because if they don't work out, and I have to move on and sell them and place them in a forever home where they're going to go be a great duck dog for somebody, that if they're not special, if they're not that, percent of a percent that I believe need to be here, need to be a part of my breeding program, then I just I just don't like dealing with it, to be honest with you, because I get the comments on the social media of, oh, like, no more solo, like, why not? Like, I loved him, and also like yeah, I mean, most of the dogs that I move on from, I love them too. I don't want to move on from them, but this is the difference between running a business and just having a pet. I genuinely love all of my dogs. I genuinely have loved all the dogs that I have moved on from, as far as place them again. I call them forever homes because they live a fantastic life. Most of these dogs live better lives than I do. But I look at Solo, and as I've kind of kept you guys a little bit in the loop on his progressions, just the thought alone of not hunting him in a year boggles a lot of people's minds. The thought of taking him on hunts and not letting him retrieve and using it as a training session. I think it's fair to say a lot of people don't have the discipline to be able to do that, because if that bird lands right there, I'm going to send him, right? I think that a lot of people don't have the patience to go through this process and come out the other side with an elite dog. Because let's just be real, elite dogs oftentimes don't have the skeletons in the closet that most young dogs end up getting through that first season of uncontrolled hunting. There's a reason that most dogs that field trial or campaign on tests don't hunt. There's too much unpredictable. There's too much that you can't control. There are bad habits. Now, I'm not saying that. My dogs will always be hunting dogs. My dogs will always hunt with me. Yeah, they're going to compete. I think they're going to kick some ass doing it, as I've proven. But they also are going to be that hunting dog, I would say first and foremost, because that is what I love to do. And that is what they love to do. I just have to be a better handler to be able to handle out of the situations that could be bad. Let's use the example of the breaking dog. The dog that is breaking, I need to make sure my dog doesn't. Extra, right? Because if he's hunting with a very controlled dog, he's going to be very less tempted to go do that bad habit himself. If all of a sudden he starts breaking, I'm focused on shooting, I look down, my dog's gone, what do you think he's going to want to do the next time? And now we create an issue, and all of a sudden we go to a test. Now he's wanting to break at the test, right? I need to be a better handler. And I love that because it pushes me. But I think it's something that as you really look at the progressions of your dog, eliminate the timelines. Eliminate as many skeletons as you can out of the closet. Finish your training and be proficient as both the trained dog and the trained handler so that when you do go into the field, you can be successful and eliminate those frustrating situations. Think about this and go all the way back to the beginning. Do not allow Mother Nature to have you play the sympathy card. And I'm sure the guy that sent this in is listening. I'm not ragging on you, dude. There's a lot of people out there that are asking the same questions. Okay, you just happen to be the one that sent it in right before I did this recording. So I was like, oh, I want to talk about this. So I think kudos to you for reaching out and trying to be active and trying to find a way to be productive, because that's what you need to do. Be productive. Don't, glass is half full, not half empty. How do we make the most of this? Keep being productive. I am going to point my truck west next week, and I'm going to be going out to Montana. I'm going to be hunting with my boys out of Sitka. I think I told you that. And unless something changes, Whitney is coming with, which I'm super stoked for because she has never hunted Montana before. And her and I love Montana. I'll kind of tell you more about her and my history in Montana here probably in the next episode as I kind of talk about that hunt. Hopefully I have some stuff to share with you guys. But in the meantime, hope you guys have an awesome new year. Hope you guys have a great start to 2022. And let me share something that I do. Write your goals down. I'm a very goal-oriented person. I do this with all my employees. I do this with myself, and I stick with this. I have found that when I write goals down, I'm going to go achieve them. I can refer back to them, and I can make sure that I'm staying on task for the goals I set for myself for the year. Go write your goals down with your dog. Write them down, refer back to them, go accomplish them. You're going to have a very, very successful 2022. So hope you guys have a great, great new year, and we'll talk to you in the new year. Thank you again for your support over 2021. Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Leave us a review on iTunes, and a special thank you to DUK, because without them, we couldn't do what we do here, bringing this information to you.